Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. It was another great weekend of NFL football, but now we got to look at the waiver wires. What players should you be targeting to pick up on your team, and which ones are immediately startable? And there are a few, so you definitely want to check it out. Here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Thank you for joining me today. And hey, if you haven't done so already, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and of course, subscribe. All those things help me on the YouTube algorithm, and I very much appreciate it. And we got stuff to go through today because we're going to talk about the week 3 waiver wire. And I don't know how week 2 has been for you. Week 2 is not done yet. We still have the Monday night game tonight. But overall, a decent week. Not as good as week 1. I don't think I'm going to be able to. I think if I get 4 wins this week, I'm going to be super happy. So we'll have to see what happens. But basically, everyone that did bad in week 1 seems to have done pretty good in week 2, and then just the opposite. So that's fantasy football for you. It's the agony and the ecstasy. But we got to keep working on improving our teams every week through the course of the season, man. That's super important to manage your team, find players, add them to your list. And although I'm not recommending any drops yet, we're still only 2 weeks in. After next week, it's probably going to be, there's going to be some people like, get them off your roster. They're not doing you any good for fantasy. So, but we're going to look at waiver wire pickups for this week. Going to go through all the major positions here. I do have some good options on all of them, so definitely go on there, find these players, get them on, get a waiver priority on them. Hopefully, you have decent waiver priority this week, and try to get these guys on your team. And also just check, see what other players are there. Again, I like to check the waiver wire multiple times each week. Once after the Sunday games, and then once after the waivers clear on Wednesday. So it's a good time to check just to see what other people are doing, who's been dropped onto the waiver wire, who could you pick up. And, last week I picked up Christian Kirk in one of my leagues. And so you never know who's going to be available, and you can just grab them. So that's great. So let's start right into it. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Now, my first quarterback that I'm going to recommend, for football is a terrible choice, but for fantasy football, he's been very effective so far this year. And I'm talking about Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. He's currently 19% rostered, and say what you will about him, and I will probably agree with you. The dude has been good for fantasy through 2 weeks of the season. Last week against a good Washington defense, he scored 29.46 points. That makes him the third best quarterback on the week, which is unbelievable. Now, that did include an amazing 95 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, which was second only to Lamar Jackson this past week. But I don't think we can count on that sort of volume going forward. But, in week 1, the dude got also around 22 points. And this is a team, this is an offense that I just feel is ramping up. They're going to get better as they go along. We saw improvement on Saquon Barkley from week 1 to week 2. And we also saw the drama of Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney bitching about them not getting enough targets. And so there is upside there. They're being the squeaky wheel. They're going to demand more targets. And so, like I said, I think Daniel Jones is a good choice. It's a contract year for this guy. And so he's trying to get the big contract. He's trying to prove that he is worthy of a contract extension. I don't think he's done it yet. But shoot, I mean, let's just wait and see what happens here. But I think he's absolutely worth rostering. And would I start him? You know what? I might. I've got like 3 leagues where I took I got like 3 teams which have Justin Herbert on my team. And you know what? Justin Herbert has looked great for regular football, but he has been garbage for fantasy football. The dude only has 2 passing touchdowns through 2 weeks. That's not going to do it for fantasy. 15 points from my quarterback position is not going to win me games. And so, you know what? And he's got a tough matchup against Kansas City. Could be a shootout, though. I'm not saying that. I think I'm going to give him one more try because I think he can do he's done well against Kansas City in the past, so I don't see any reason why that would change for this year. But again, I think Daniel Jones is worth a roster slot. Easy to get. Next guy also, man, another guy surprisingly good, both in regular football and in fantasy, but I'm talking about Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders, who is currently only 26% rostered. But, I mean, how surprised are you that the Raiders are 2-0 after playing the Ravens and the Steelers? This is a scrappy team. They're good. I mean, that's amazing. Carr scored 24 points in week 2. That's the 7th best on the week. And that's about the same as he scored in week 1 when he got 25 points. So that's a nice level of consistency. And so, those are the kind of players you want. I think I would be very comfortable starting Derek Carr week 3. They've got Miami at home. Miami coming off that blowout loss, and then they got to travel across the country. Again, I think this team, they've got some offensive prowess. They're not intimidated by anybody, and they're playing really well. So I think they're worth a pickup, and I think Derek Carr, you could start him. I think he's a start. The third guy is not available in 50% of leagues, but it's close enough that you probably just want to check. But Kirk Cousins, Minnesota Vikings, is only 66% rostered. And again, he's put together 2 strong performances this year. He got 25 points in week 2 against Arizona, which was 5th best on the week. And then in week 1, he got you 22 points. And so of all these quarterbacks, I consider this guy to be the head of the best offense of that bunch with good, really good skill position players. And I think he will continue to be successful going forward. He gets 3 home games in a row over the next 3 weeks. He gets Seattle, Cleveland, and Detroit. Now, I don't think Cleveland's defense is pretty good. I'm not at all intimidated by Seattle, and Detroit's going to be a great game. So, again, just check. If he's there, grab him. Get him on your team. Let's move on to running backs. All right, so let's move on to running backs right now, and I got some good names here. But the first one, I got to say, man, this is a guy you got to get onto your team right now because he is not going to be here after next week. But it's Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys, who's currently 53% rostered in Yahoo leagues. And my question is Tony Pollard the best running back on this team? And I'd have to say, through the first 2 weeks of the season, it seems to be that Tony Pollard is the more explosive and dynamic option for this offense. In week 2 against the Chargers, he got 13 carries for 109 yards and a touchdown, along with 3 receptions for 31 yards on 3 targets. So he earned 23 fantasy points, which is amazing and very impressive. He is over what I consider the line for a startable running back asset, which is 15 touches and targets. So he got 16, so he's over that limit. So I think he is immediately startable as a flex option for you. He is, let's see here. I think his work is portending towards more work going forward, like getting a bigger share of the backfield from Zeke. And I think that's all part of the plan. They definitely do not want to use Zeke as a workhorse anymore, and I think it makes sense. I don't think he can do that anymore, but he absolutely needs to be on your roster. They get Philly at home next week, so it's a good game. And like I said, great choice. This would be my number 1 choice for waivers. My number 1 pickup would be to try to get Tony Pollard on my team. The next guy is a guy who I'm not yet ready to start, but you definitely need to get him on your roster. And I know that probably a ton of people dumped him after week 1. So he's only 60% rostered right now, but Sony Michel of the LA Rams. is currently available. Of course, Darrell Henderson suffered that ribs injury, which is a very difficult injury to heal from. And so that could mean that Sony Michel takes on a bigger role. And we saw that after Darrell Henderson went out, Sony Michel came in and he got 10 carries last week. And he was very effective. He got 4.6 yards per carry. Now, he didn't get any use in the passing game, so that is obviously a limiting factor. If you are in a full PPR league, I don't think I would recommend Sony Michel. But if you're in a standard points or half PPR, I think he still is a good choice. But there is upside here. There is more work available on the horizon, and I would absolutely not start him this next week because they are playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I believe it's a home game, but even so, you don't want to start a running back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think I want him on my roster for sure. And if he continues to get more work in week 3, then that means week 4, 5, 6, maybe he does move into that realm where he becomes somebody that you could start. And again, like I said, the threshold for me is 15 touches and targets total. So if he gets there or over, put him in your lineup. The third guy is, and I cannot believe I am recommending him or mentioning him or anything. Am I actually doing this? Okay. Am I actually recommending Cordarrelle Patterson? I'm not, but I think we need to talk about him because I think there is opportunity here. And the first thing about Cordarrelle Patterson that I like is that he is registered as both a running back and a wide receiver in Yahoo League. So you can start him in either position, which is really good. The guy got 7 touches and 6 targets. So he's under that 15. So he's not yet to a point where I would start him, but I think you got to put him on your roster. I mean, he got... let's see here. He was surprisingly effective against that Tampa Bay defense that I just talked about. He earned 23.9 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And, again, do I like Cordarrelle Patterson? I can't believe it. It's such a weird thing because this is like his first year working as a running back. And so I don't know how to read this. But clearly it's still a split time with Mike Davis. Again, I think Atlanta is going to be playing from behind through most of this year. And so if he can garner a decent amount of targets, and last week he got how many targets? 6 targets. That's really good. He might be worth a fantasy start at some point in the season, but you definitely want to get him on your bench. Just get him on your bench and see what happens. That's where I'm at with him. And up next, they got the New York Giants at home. So that should be a pretty good game for him to be able to do something. But I wouldn't start him. Don't start him. So let's move on to wide receivers. Now, the first wide receiver is currently 57% rostered. So, again, not at my 50% or below, but it's close enough. You really need to check to see if this guy's available. But it's Sterling Shepard of the New York Giants, who has somehow managed to get, let's see here. Well, last week he got 10 targets, and he caught 9 of them for 94 yards. And that's on top of what he did in week 1, where, again, he got I think he got 9 targets. So he's got 19 targets through 2 games. He's clearly the number 1 receiver on this team. And he has the trust of Daniel Jones. That's why he's getting all the targets. That's why Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney are so pissed off, is because Sterling Shepard is hogging all the targets. Now, obviously, Sterling Shepard has always been an injury risk. But as long as he's healthy right now, which he is, shoot. I mean, how could you sit him at this point? Let's see here. He's a fully startable asset. He's a wide receiver too right now. So let's utilize that. Get him on your team, and you can put him right into your lineup. It's absolutely a great play right now. Next up, he gets Atlanta at home. Okay. Oh, so it's the Atlanta game is in New York. So again, another really good game script for him to be able to have another very productive day. And I don't even think he's gotten a touchdown yet. Maybe he did. I think he got a touchdown in week 1. But Anyway, yeah, go see if he's there. The next name I got is a guy that I never like to recommend, but right now opportunity's there, and you got to take advantage. Devante Parker of the Miami Dolphins, who's currently 40% rostered, but obviously with the continued issues with Fuller, and as long as Fuller is out, I think Devante Parker is a reasonable asset to start at flex or just keep him on your bench as a depth play. But he got 9 targets in week 2. Now, obviously, he only managed 42 yards off those 9 targets. But Miami was just getting crushed by Buffalo last week. Buffalo clearly has a very, very effective defense this year. So that was part of the problem. And then they lost Tua like midway through the game. So that was another problem. He's a risky pickup. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but they get Las Vegas next. And if Fuller misses, again, he's going to get another 9 or 10 targets. And if you are weak at your wide receiver position and you need someone that can get some volume, I think he's a good choice. Now, the third guy, another great option, man. The guy I definitely want on my team, Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears, who's only 45% rostered and has gotten how many targets? 15 targets. Is that right? Yeah, 15 targets through the first 2 weeks of the season. And again, that makes him a startable asset. That makes him a flex play that you could try, that you could start. He ended up with 6 catches for 66 yards this week. Excellent. And right now, he hasn't gotten any touchdowns either. So you know that the touchdowns are coming. And if he gets you a touchdown, he's going to have a great stat line. So he definitely needs to be on your roster. Check to see if he's there. They are at Cleveland next. So again, a tough matchup, but I'm guessing that Cleveland will lead through most of this game, which will lead to a nice positive game script for the wide receivers. And go ahead and do it. Go ahead and get Mooney. Now, the next position is now officially my least favorite position in football and fantasy football, tight ends. I told you that last week, in week 1, I had Mike Gesicki get me a 0 burger on my standard points league. And so I dropped him, and I picked up Cole Kmet because he got 8 targets in week 1. And what did Cole Kmet do for me in week 2? Cole Kmet got me another 0 burger because he had 1 catch for 0 yards. It's a standard points league. I got 0 points again. I've earned no points from tight ends on my standard points league. And frankly, my standard points league is in trouble right now because it has performed terribly through the first 2 weeks, which is surprising because I was the number 1 projected point getter for both week 1 and week 2. And yet somehow it's just awful. And I don't even know what to do now. I'm thinking I'm just going to keep him on there because maybe if I can get one of these guys, I'll make the switch. But I only got 2 tight ends to mention off the waiver wire right now. The first one is Jack Doyle, who is currently 1% rostered. So this is a guy you can get. He's no problem to get. But he got 8 targets in week 2. And he got 4 targets in week 1. So he's gotten 12 targets so far this season. He managed 64 yards in week 2. He got a 2-point conversion. And in week 1, he didn't do much. He got like 20 yards. So he's only gotten 85 receiving yards through 2 weeks. But in PPR, he's got value because he's had 8 receptions. So again, Jack Doyle is not a guy that I would really be interested in rostering, but right now in that team that I got, I'm like, maybe I need to pick up Jack Doyle. Another one that you need to look is a guy I recommended last week, Jared Cook, who again had a decent week. It's nothing to write home about. Did you know that the top tight end in fantasy, in the NFL this past week, only got 9 targets? That's it. That was Travis Kelce. And most of these guys only are getting like 4 or 5 targets a game. I mean, Gronk only had like 5 targets. And of course, he got another 2 touchdowns, which is amazing. That's got to regress, but I'm gonna ride that snake for as long as I can. But Jared Cook, again, he got 5 targets in week 2. That gives him 13 through 2 weeks. He's gotten 84 yards, no touchdowns either. he's a player of minimal value, but this position is so thin that, even a few points can help your team. And God, I would love to see a tight end in my standard points league score me some points. It would be really nice to see at this point. They get Kansas City next. Should be a shootout. So, again, I think both Doyle and Cook are worth a pick if you happen to be saddled with one of these terrible, awful tight ends. Oh, yeah, and then Mike Gesicki, of course, he got like 3 catches last week. But, again, only like 5 targets. They're just not getting any volume. And that's where we're at. So finally, the final thing I want to talk about is the defenses. What are some good streaming defenses for this week? I got a couple of names for you. I think both these are excellent options. First one, only 19% rostered. A team that did pretty good in week 1 because they got to play the Jets. Well, now in week 3, they get Houston. So again, this could just be one of those seasons where you just want to start whoever's playing Jacksonville, the Jets, or Houston, go for it. That's the one you want to start. They are currently projected to have 8.59 fantasy points in week 2, and they've actually done really good. They scored 9 points against the Jets, and they scored 12 points against New Orleans last week, of course, forcing Jameis Winston to start throwing interceptions again. It just feels like old times. So, again, great streaming option. I also like Arizona for week 3. Now, obviously, they did not do well in week 2. I was saying that game could go either way because I thought that Minnesota was very similar in its makeup to Tennessee and its offensive makeup, but somehow the magic was lost. They lost, but they get to travel to Jacksonville for week 3. This is a team. Jacksonville allowed 7 points to 7 points to Houston defense and 9 points to the Denver defense, with a combined 5 interceptions over the first 2 weeks. So it's a great choice. There's going to be turnovers. It's going to work. They're projected at 7.38 points for week 3. Again, both these options are great if you're streaming the defense position, which I normally do, but those are 2 that you definitely want to get. And I think maybe Carolina might be one to just pick up and hold on to because they've been doing really, really good over the first couple weeks of the season. So there you go. There you have it. There's my week 3 waiver wires. Tell me how your teams are doing. I'm obviously going to give you a full recap of what happened with my teams when I do my start-sit show on Wednesday. But I want to see how you're doing. Where are you most concerned with your team? And again, the waiver wires are one option, obviously, but also trades, man. Look for, at this point, you kind of got a good idea of where you're strong and where you're weak for your team. And if you are very strong at running back, but weak at wide receiver, find a team that's just the opposite of that. And try to do a trade. Again, you want a trade that's mutually beneficial. That's how you get those things to happen. And work some trades in your league. If you can find mutually beneficial trades, those are the kind of trades that get completed. Don't just send like those garbage trades where I'm going to give you 5 terrible players off my bench for Alvin Kamara. You're never going to get it. It's never going to happen. But if you can say, look, I need a wide receiver. You need a running back. I have Kareem Hunt as my 4th running back. But I could really use a decent wide receiver off of your team. You can make it happen. It can happen. So look at your team, look at your opponent's teams, and also those teams that are 0-2 after this week are going to be very, very interested in conducting trades. So you can look at that as well and go after those teams and say, hey, where can we work together, where we can get some things to happen. So there you go. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions or anything, leave a comment down below. Love to hear it. Love to talk to you. And so have yourself a great fantasy day. Good luck in week 3. I'll talk to you again on Wednesday.